What the flick, everybody? Let's just keep going. Ben, Christy, Alonso, Matt, it's the kind of thing we can do here on the show.
Fuck up, phlegm.
Unfettered.
0 Dark 30.
Unexpectorated.
Oh.
Kathryn Bigelow's follow-up.
Yes, 0 Dark 30 is basically the story about the hunt for and then assassination of Osama bin Laden.
Fine,
and
give
how
it away.
Took 10 years. Yeah,
Spoilers.
right? If you go into this movie not knowing what happens, you're kind of a clown. Anyway, yeah, it's directed by Kathryn Bigelow and written by Mark Boal. Mark Boal, sorry. The team who had worked on Hurt Locker, and let's watch the trailer.
Can I be honest with you? I am bad news. I'm not your friend. I'm not gonna help you. I'm gonna break you. Any questions?
I was really impressed, though, with the fact that this is an enormous story, and they made it comprehensive and accessible, and yet like clearly cared about authenticity every step of the way. Like it's not overwhelming, it's not confusing, it sucks you in.
Yeah, I mean, they make the choice to make the story the star. So there are all these characters in it who are basically functionaries of the plot. Like, you know, we follow Jessica Chastain's character throughout the whole film, but we don't learn a thing about her.
But that's okay.
No, yeah, that's where I was getting to. Yes,
Well, and they make reference to that. There is nothing there.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm sure she has an interior life of her own, the actual person, but no, the movie is more interested in like getting us from point A to point B to point B to C, and you know, I think on that level it's really interesting. I found the whole sort of nitty-gritty of what goes into a global manhunt really interesting. These little stray bits of evidence, and somebody says this, and he was meeting with that guy, and da-da-da. And how they cobble that together is, I found that really interesting. I found it much more interesting than the subsequent raid part of the film, which surprised me because Bigelow's so good with action.
I thought that was thrilling, though. I did.
Yeah.
I mean, I agree with you. I thought that part was better than the raid, but I still loved the raid. I loved them both.
Well, the raid is really intense. Like,
and the raid's only like the last 30 minutes.
Yeah, but the whole thing is like it's very procedural and very clinical, and I love that about it. But then the raid itself is intense.
Very intense.
Like there's actual emotion.
I think there's
behind
intensity added to the fact that you spent 2 hours of the movie leading up to that, getting to the point where, like, okay, now this is the end game, and I think that really helps build the tension. I think that anything shorter than that actually would have made that raid less intense.
See, that's strange, because for me, I felt like that there was not, you know, it sounds weird to say it wasn't suspenseful for a movie where we all know the ending, but like think about Argo or Lincoln or Apollo 13, even though we know how that's going to come out, the filmmakers know how to generate some level of, oh, what if it doesn't land? What if, you know, and this movie, I just kind of felt like by the time they got to the raid, there was no ever for me any kind of sense of tension. It was like, okay, well, this is going to happen now.
And yet, we don't know all the details. I mean, I don't know if you're an expert on how the raid went down, but like, didn't you learn things? Like, I didn't realize that a helicopter crashed. I didn't. I know that was out there. But I didn't know that. There's a lot of detail.
There were revelations, but I don't know. I just didn't find it tense, and that's just a personal thing. I was a lot of people I've talked to really love that part. So you know.
Yeah, I thought it exactly achieved that. I mean, I hear what you're saying, but I thought every moment was like, I can't believe I know that this works, and I know the helicopter crashes, and I know we don't have anybody killed, and still I'm like, open the door. So
we should talk about the controversy.
But before we get into that, I do want to call out Jason Clarke. Who was
great.
Oh yeah,
great.
You know, we saw him in
supporting cast is great.
He was also in Lawless. Also, he's done a bunch of work this year. I think we're going to see really big things out of him going forward.
Well, we meet him right at the beginning, and it gets to the controversy because he is the lead torturer,
interrogator.
And the rest of this cast is amazing. I mean, Mark Strong and James
Chris Pratt.
Mark Duplass worked for the CIA in this thing.
Right.
It's very strange.
Actually, one issue I had with the film, and people talk about how, in Lincoln, it was so disconcerting because all these famous faces keep popping up. I'm like, well, you wait till you see 0 Dark 30. I literally started like playing a game of like, how many lines is John Barrowman going to have? Oh, 2. Okay, great. And then, you know, just that sort of thing. There's a lot of that going on.
But Jason Clarke is the lead interrogator, and he tortures the suspect at the beginning. This is not long after our invasion of Afghanistan that we're torturing this guy, waterboarding him, much more, beating him, eventually putting him in a tiny coffin, essentially, and closing it up. And the issue is that at some point in that torture, later when we're being nice to him, he reveals a key piece of information that leads to eventually getting bin Laden 8 years later.
Right.
And the issue is...
And there's another character who gives up information, who's an older man, who specifically says, I don't want to be tortured again.
Yeah, so there's been a lot of discussion and debate from critics and from Glenn Greenwald, who wrote about this before he'd seen the film, but even then backed it up after he'd seen the film, is that does the movie suggest that we got key actionable intelligence from torture? And then others have said they've seen it and it doesn't. And I think it's very clearly kind of in between. One thing that and Mark Boal and Kathryn Bigelow both say that they did not want to in any way suggest that torture led to actionable intelligence. 3 people were waterboarded who knew about this courier. 2 of them, including Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, didn't mention the courier ever, despite being tortured and tortured and tortured and tortured. So, but it's complicated. I didn't leave this movie feeling like this was a pro-torture movie at all, which is what I disagree with.
I felt like there is the implication there that yes, waterboarding yielded this nugget of info, and everything that I had been hearing on the news. I'm not, an active journalist, but the reports that I've been hearing later, when people were talking more about, what the Bush regime had okayed, was that we didn't get anything out of waterboarding, that all the valuable intel we got regarding bin Laden came out of just standard interrogation. And the filmmakers deny that they meant to do that, and I kind of take them at their word, because the movie is, in a sense, so sort of not dispassionate, but it's very
clinical.
It's clinical, yeah. It's very kind of matter of fact, and here this happened, this happened, this happened. So I think part of the problem with that, when you do that kind of storytelling, is that it's easy then for people to read into what you really meant, and I think people are going to read into it. That's the point. So I'm with you. I think it's somewhere in the middle where maybe they're guilty, maybe they're not, but it's something to think about when you watch it.
I think there is I'm sorry, Matt. Let me just say very quick. I think there is a really critical obligation, around this. I mean, when people make a movie of a real event, they're not under an obligation to tell the story exactly correctly.
Sure.
But we're having a really serious debate in this country about whether it's okay for the United States of America to go ahead and torture, and I think when you misrepresent it, intentionally or not, it is totally fair to call you out.
But to your point, Bigelow keeps saying like she wanted a boots on the ground type story, and they do, at one point talk about how as they get closer and closer to the Abu Ahmed character, and there's they say something about, we had dossiers, we had information that came from, I think, Morocco maybe, or wherever, that nobody, after the initial attacks, nobody had really, they hadn't sifted through all of it. And so the stuff that they were trying to get from interrogation wasn't necessarily as relevant as information they may have already had. So I think that on the one hand, that's kind of showing maybe the torture doesn't work, but the flip side of that, and this is where I think it gets a little problematic, we know from some of the news reports that people in the US, that people, in the CIA and people in the military did protest, did raise, go up the flagpole saying, what we're doing to these prisoners is not right, and none of that's covered in the movie.
No, none of that is in the movie.
None of that's covered in the movie.
There's not a qualm to be found.
You could make a strong argument that if you're doing boots on the ground, you're not covering that aspect of it at all. And is that
every professional interrogator says torture doesn't work. But of course, that doesn't mean that you're never going to get a piece of information out of torture that might be useful. They're just saying overall, it's the wrong approach to take. You get less information. The guy who's tortured at one point in the movie has information about an upcoming attack in Saudi Arabia that killed a lot of people. And he says in the movie, they're asking, when's the attack? When's the attack? And he says, Wednesday, Friday, Sunday, Monday. And he's crying and speaking gibberish, and you realize, well, this is not helping. Here's torture literally doing the thing that the professional interrogator.
I think that unfortunately, and I think the reason that people get upset about films taking liberties like this or having an agenda like this is that more often than not, this is what becomes the history.
That's right.
This is how people think about how these events went down, is the movie version.
Right, but she's not judging it. She's not saying torture works. She's saying this is what happened. I don't think she's connecting the dots.
She's kind of making it part of this complete breakfast. She is implying that they got something out of that torture session that leads to the rest of the movie.
But people will see that. They may see that. I don't think it's the big takeaway from the movie. I think they may see that and think, oh yeah, look, we got to do bad things if we're gonna get results.
It's part of the entire massive, complicated process.
Sure.
It's not the actual thing.
But if you leave certain elements out of it, then it's clearly that could skew the story if you're leaving certain things out and only focusing on other things.
Obviously you can't.
It's a decade of work.
The thing of it is that torture was in 2002 or 2003, and And we got bin Laden in 2011, so just keep that in mind. All right, so numbers on it though we should get to. It's at 90. Where is it at?
It's in the 90s on the tomato meter right now, but the first negative reviews started to really call out that this movie, what we're saying, that this movie is immoral because it puts across this idea that torture is really kind of.
And some of the positive reviews now will come from right-wingers who are and Bush administration backers.
Exactly.
Who say,
See, we
told you.
I actually, originally was thinking that this was going to do really well at the Oscars, and I could see there being a whisper campaign against it.
I think it's your front runner right now at this very second in time.
I could see a backlash saying, "Oh yeah,
there might be a backlash." I don't think.
I think Lincoln's safe, and so Lincoln wins.
But I don't think it does what the concern is. I think we sort of agree that I didn't walk out of that movie. I went in thinking that's what I was going to think, and I went out thinking, well, they made it complicated, and I wish they'd been a little more clear. But I don't leave that thinking, oh, torture is awesome, and that's what. No,
but it's definitely, it was one of the things that I thought about, and I think again because the film is so complicated, it doesn't leave you with a clear yes it is, no it isn't, and that can be even more sort of like, well then which is it?
Right.
Yeah, I thought of none of that. I didn't think of any of that controversy until I started reading about it a week later. I actually really liked the movie. I came out of it thinking, God damn, that's a hell of a movie. I give it an 8.3.
There you go.
All right, 8.3.
7.4.
9.
8.8, and it would have been a 10 if not for my slight qualms about torturing people in the name of the United States of America.
As you wish.
So that's an 8.4, a significant endorsement for Zero Dark 30.
Okay.